Recently, I got an email from someone with a subject line stating, "Republican Seventh-day Adventists have been deceived by a Satanist." The email went on to talk about how Ayn Rand was a Satanist and a very hard-working advocate of the First Demon's message. Here we are, close to the November 2012 elections in the United States of America. Should we be advocating one political candidate over another? What counsel do we Seventh-day Adventists have in regard to politics? Should we involve ourselves in the political process? I thought I'd share a few quotes I found in the Spirit of Prophecy as a stepping stone to help you see what God desires in His people. This short presentation is intended to get you to study the matter further. Christianity. How many there are who do not know what it is? It is not something we put on the outside. It is a life inwrought with the life of Jesus. It means that we are wearing the robe of Christ's righteousness. In regard to the world, Christians will say, "We will not dabble in politics." They will say decidedly, "We are pilgrims and strangers. Our citizenship is above." They will not be seen choosing company for amusement. They will say, "We have ceased to be infatuated by childish things. We are strangers and pilgrims, looking for a city which hath foundations, whose builder and maker is God." The Lord has been greatly dishonored by His people catching up the issues that arise in this time of test and trial. His people are to keep free from politics. They are to stand as a separate and peculiar people. The name of God, our ruler, is to be in their foreheads, showing to all that He is their sovereign. If those who know the truth will have faith and zeal corresponding to their knowledge, if they desire to manifest their piety and reveal what the truth has done for them, showing that the salt has not lost its savor, they will communicate the saving and sanctifying power of the truth to all with whom they associate. There will then be less controversy and a deeper interest in the things of God. What struck me in this quote was she said Christians will say, "We will not dabble in politics." She goes on to impress that we are pilgrims and strangers, and how our citizenship is in heaven, that we should be striving and spending our efforts to communicate the saving and sanctifying power of truth to all those we associate with, because as Christians we are striving for heaven and not this world. I see this sentiment expressed further in this article. The Lord did not want you to employ your God-given time and set your talents to work in wrong channels. Your work was not set you in that line at all. Neither you nor any of your brethren had any work to do in arguing or writing or taking any part whatever in politics. God was dishonored by all who acted any part in politics. God has chosen a people who are to proclaim the third angel's message to the world. They are to be a separate and peculiar people in this world of churches who are transgressing His commandments. We have a special work to do to prepare the people for the greatest event the world has ever seen. The books of Daniel and Revelation are of great consequence to us and should be studied with great earnestness. As Seventh-day Adventists, we have a message, a unique message, which we need to give to the world, most of whom who have never heard it. And as she says, to prepare them for the greatest event the world has ever seen. God has warned His people not to become absorbed in politics. We cannot bear the sign of God as His commandment-keeping people if we mingle with the strife of the world. We are not to give our minds to political issues. God's people are walking contrary to His will when they mix up politics, and those who commence this work in the southern states reveal that they are not taught and led by God, but by that spirit which creates contention and strife and every evil work. We are subjects of the Lord's kingdom, and we are to work to establish that kingdom in righteousness. Though she was talking about an issue during her time, I think this quote, as well as others we'll look at, will tell us of the danger in getting involved in worldly politics. Notice she mentions people being led by the spirit of contention and strife. She talks more about this in another quote we'll read. She goes on to say, The Lord has been greatly dishonored by his people's catching up the issues that arise in this time of test and trial. His people are to keep free from politics. They are to stand as a separate, peculiar people. The name of God our ruler is to be in their foreheads, showing to all that he is their sovereign. Neither you nor any of your brethren had any work to do in arguing or writing or taking any part whatever in politics. God was dishonored by all who acted any part in politics. God has chosen a people who are to proclaim the third angel's message to the world. They are to be a separate and peculiar people in this world of churches who are transgressing his commandments. The Lord would have his people a separate and peculiar people, bearing the sign and seal of the Sabbath, in preserving the memorial, the seventh day, upon which the Lord rested after his work of creation. The redemption of men draws them away from political strife to rest and peace and quietude in God. I see her concerned about us getting caught up in political affairs and not showing the world the distinctiveness of our true message and calling. Excitement concerning politics. Those who teach the Bible in our churches and our schools are not at liberty to unite in making apparent their prejudices for or against political men or measures, because by so doing they stir up the minds of others, leading each to advocate his favorite theory. There are among those professing to believe present truth some who will thus be stirred up to express their sentiments and political preferences, so that division will be brought into the church. I had never read this particular paragraph before now, and thought it was quite interesting that not only should the Bible teachers in our churches and schools not make apparent their prejudices for or against political men, but also political measures. I think the rest of this section gives us the reason, so let's continue. The Lord would have his people bury political questions. On these themes, silence is eloquence. Christ calls upon his followers to come into unity on the pure gospel principles which are plainly revealed in the Word of God. We cannot, with safety, vote for political parties, for we do not know whom we are voting for. We cannot, with safety, take part in any political scheme. Those who are Christians indeed will be branches of the true vine and will bear the same fruit as the vine. They will act in harmony in Christian fellowship. They will not wear political badges, but the badge of Christ. What are we to do then? Let political questions alone. There is a large vineyard to be cultivated, but while Christians are to work among unbelievers, they are not to appear like worldlings. They are not to spend their time talking politics or acting politics, for by so doing they give the enemy opportunity to come in and cause variance and discord. God's children are to separate themselves from politics, from any alliance with unbelievers. Do not take part in political strife. Separate from the world and refrain from bringing into the church or school ideas that will lead to contention and disorder. Dissension is the moral poison taken into the system by human beings who are selfish. Here again I see the concern of wrapping ourselves up with the world instead of Christ and the gospel. Here we are told not to even spend time talking or acting politics because it can bring discord. Here, as well as in other quotes, the Lord is concerned that we don't bring in needless contention and disorder. I call upon my brethren who are appointed to educate to change their course of action. It is a mistake for you to link your interests with any political party, to cast your vote with them or for them. Those who stand as educators, as ministers, as laborers, together with God in any line, have no battles to fight in the political world. When you have the time, read the entire 61st chapter of Fundamentals of Christian Education. Here you will find some very similar quotes, and you will also find the following quote. Their citizenship is in heaven. The Lord calls upon them to stand as a separate and peculiar people. He would have no schisms in the body of believers. His people are to possess the elements of reconciliation. Is it their work to make enemies in the political world? No, no. They are to stand as subjects of Christ's kingdom, bearing the banner on which is inscribed the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. They are to carry the burden of a special work, a special message. We have a personal responsibility, and this is to be revealed before the heavenly universe, before angels, and before men. God does not call upon us to enlarge our influence by mingling with society, by linking up with men on political questions, but by standing as individual parts of His great whole, with Christ as our head. Christ is our Prince, and as His subjects, we are to do the work appointed us by God. Let us remember Ephesians 6:12 that tells us, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." Our battle is a spiritual one, against the enemy of our soul who is seeking to destroy us. If we are not to vote for people or parties, what about voting for issues? From what I've read in the Spirit of Prophecy, I see Ellen White does talk about voting for issues. Back in her day, during the time of Prohibition and temperance movements, she wrote, "The advocates of temperance fail to do their whole duty unless they exert their influence by precept and example, by voice and pen and vote, in favor of prohibition and total abstinence." Review and Herald, November 8, 1881. You may be able to find other quotes in this regard. I hope you found these quotes enlightening, and I hope they encourage you to search out other quotes that I haven't mentioned. Maybe you can share some of what you find with me. May God bless you as you follow Him and seek to bring others into His kingdom.